Yo, thank you for coming and welcome. I am Lloyd and I am here to talk about the server meshing dev update in the quickest explain like I'm 5 version as I possibly can. INTREPID NET is going to be using server meshing, inter-server replication, microservices, dynamic gridding, and replication and entity graphs. So this will essentially be reducing CPU and RAM in all of these different little techniques of networking and server infrastructure. But to give you a basic lowdown of how this happens from a infrastructure level, we're going to do it nice and simple here. Okay. So it's not currently implemented in Intrepid's infrastructure. According to Steven, they are working mostly right here in the cloud. They are not on premise yet. Once they get the bare metal servers, then they could potentially be a hybrid system where they are working with a data center and on-prem. And so these two things will combine and work through the internet and the cloud together. And that would be what's known as a hybrid infrastructure. This is very, very common. It is also very good for like storage and other things. So basics. Explain like I'm 5. We have the world of Vera. And I'm sorry, Asmongold, to tell you this, but no, we will not have one realm. That is not technologically possible. We will have one realm with many servers, and the reason why we do this is to simplify terminology. We will have our physical server, which we will call a host. So this is a bare metal server that we are calling a host. The reason why we call it a host is because it's going to host all these little servers right here. Okay, and these little servers are what's going to create Vera. And there could be many Veras on one host. So there could be Resna for NA West. There could be Norlin for NA East. There could be Shoal for Europe West. You know, we could have all these different realms that you're going to log into, create a character on, and enter the world of Vera. And this host could have 1 to 10 realms, maybe. Possibly, depending on resources. So if you have enough resources, you could have a bunch of realms. But for now, let's say there's only one realm on host number 3, okay? And this host is going to have a bunch of little servers and VMs. Well, they're little servers that are held virtually on the host, which is why we call them VMs, which are virtual machines. So these VMs are being spun up. These can also be spun up via a data center. And the data center is just using this same infrastructure and sending it out through the cloud. So that is what we refer to as the cloud, because it is also using this bare metal infrastructure, and Intrepid or anybody else is just renting them. So you are actually paying pennies by doing this, but in the long term, it's probably better to have your on-term services, or your on-premises hosts and servers. So this is probably why this is relatively cheap for now, and eventually it will get more expensive for Intrepid, but it will be better in the long run financially. That's basically as far as I want to go into on the business side of things. It can get really, really technical when you include like software and how this software is being made or used or bought, and if this is all proprietary, then Intrepid is saving a lot of money. But if it's not, then they are spending quite a bit more on non-proprietary software so that they can create these virtual machines. It's nothing to worry about at the moment. Steven has said that they are totally fine and that these expenses are not that important. So let's move on. Now, these little servers are going to basically help us use inter-server replication, which, simply put, is my character on server 1 can see your character on server 2. And when my character goes across, your character sees it and sees me going across and thinks nothing other than that. These are invisible border lines, and you will never see them as a player. But there is some technical stuff happening that allows that to happen so that there are no load screens. This happens at an extremely fast rate, and we can have a lot of players inside here to have node wars. And eventually, if this gets too crowded, we bring in a thing called dynamic gridding, which is also known as dynamic server meshing. This will create 3 servers. For server 6, there will be, instead of it being server 6, it will be server 6A. And then the cloud will be like, or the host will tell the cloud, hey, I need more resources for server 6 on this host. And the cloud says, okay, let me spin up server 6B and server 6C. And all this data is being copied and pasted. That's it. And we can't do this too many times, because if we create server 6 with too many servers, then it creates a little network storm. And storms are not good. Storms are bad. It will basically create a denial of service. It will make your lag, it will make all the players inside of that server laggy, and it will possibly kick them out. So not very good creating your own DDoS attack by creating too many servers. So we can only do this only so many times. That is the TLDR on that, and that is basically the server gridding. That is server replication. And now let's move on to microservices. Microservices basically are just these little task manager services that are all holding something like the nodes, the node XP, guilds, mail system, artisanship system, and your social system on each of these servers. So each of these servers will have those services, and all of these services will talk to this microservice center. And this one will just basically display the map of Vera. Simple as that. So if you are on server 12 and your friend is on server 1, server 12 can't see server 1, and that's an issue. But with the microservices and replication and entity graph, these will basically be allow you to see your friend in a party on server 1 when you are on server 12. So that is essentially what your microservices and replication and entity graph are doing. Another thing that the replication and entity graph is doing is allowing your player character, let's draw this way out here and say this is what's happening right over here, right? So you have your player character. Look at me, I'm a stick figure, okay? He's got his little shield. He's got his little sword. And he's got his helmet. And he's got his little gear on his body. He's got his legs, right? And he's got his shoes. And he's got his gloves, right? And then he's got maybe a little bit of magic happening. He's got his little inventory over here with different materials. He's got his little bags. He's got his PvP gear. He's got his PvE gear. All of this stuff are little entities that could be interactable with the world. And guess what? Maybe he's got his farming gear on in his character sheet. He's got a little node here that he could mine because it's a little rock. And there's a little tree over here. All these things are known as entities. And these entities cost a lot of CPU and they cost a lot of RAM. So what do? We put all this junk into sleep mode. We just tell it to go night-night, okay? And then whenever I need it, we tell it to wake up. So each individual entity is being told to wake up. This sword, all of this on me, is now just little Llewd. And little Llewd is just one entity. So it saves a lot of CPU and a lot of RAM. And if I am a miner and I like miner MINER, I will take out my little pickaxe and I will start hitting the node. Then the node will wake up. This little gathering node will wake up and it will say you have 2 rocks or basalt now being added to your inventory, and then it goes back to sleep. Right? And that's it. So it wakes up, goes to bed, wakes up, goes to bed for each individual entity, and it's not counting everything all the time, which would cost so many resources that even if you have dynamic server gridding or dynamic server meshing or whatever you want to call it, it's just too much for the system. So when you allow it to put it to sleep and wake back up, it helps the system immensely. And what does that do? It means that when I, as the client, want to push a button and say, gather that resource, gather that little rock. This can be like, oh, okay, he's on server 12 and he is going to hit the rock and then tell my character to swap from my sword and shield into a little pickaxe right over here. And then it's going to send all that data back up through, back to my client, right? And then I see my guy hitting rock. And that's it. As simple as that. But it happens at light speed. So the reason why we need this for light speed is for 2 major reasons. Low latency, right? And high player density. So we have a lot of people on the server. We want to PvP. We want to do open world PvP at any time. Well, we can because of all the systems that INTREPID NET is doing. And that is the quickest and easiest way that I can explain all of the systems. I will be going more in depth in a video after this one. I just really needed you to get the smallest portion of this so that maybe we can understand it in the next one. Anyways, thank you for coming. I hope you come again.